Euro Truck Simulator 2 and American Truck Simulator on consoles. I know many of you have been waiting for this release for a very long time. Every time SCS Software posts an update, every live stream, every blog post, every screenshot, one question always appears in the comments. When is ETS2 coming to PlayStation? When is ATS coming to Xbox? It's probably one of the most requested features in the community right now. And today, I think we might finally have a general direction of what's happening internally at SCS Software. Now, let's get into it. So, the biggest question is still the same. When will SCS Software release Euro Truck Simulator 2 and American Truck Simulator on consoles? Unfortunately, SCS hasn't announced an official release date yet, but sometimes you don't always need an announcement. Sometimes the clues are already there, and that's exactly what I want to show you today. Take a closer look at this picture. Don't just glance at it for a second. Really pay attention to what's happening. What do you see? At first glance, it simply looks like developers working in an office, but if you look closer, there are some very interesting details. The first thing that stands out is that multiple people are actively testing the game. This doesn't look like casual gameplay, it looks like structured testing. One person appears to be collecting information, another seems to be documenting results, and another developer is focused entirely on gameplay using a controller. That alone is quite interesting, because when developers reach this stage, they're usually looking for bugs, performance issues, user experience problems, menu navigation, responsiveness, and overall gameplay quality. They're making sure everything works as expected. They're testing, they're collecting data, and they're repeating the process over and over again. Then, there's another detail that caught my attention. Look at the desk. You can clearly see a Thrustmaster steering wheel setup. Now, that might not seem important at first, but I think it tells us something. If my interpretation is correct, SCS could also be testing supported steering wheels for consoles. As many of you already know, not every racing wheel works on PlayStation. Not every wheel works on Xbox. Each console has its own supported hardware. Some steering wheels are officially licensed, others simply aren't compatible. If ETS2 and ATS eventually launch on consoles, steering wheel support will be a very important part of the experience. Imagine buying the game on PS5 or Xbox, connecting your wheel, only to discover that it doesn't work properly. That isn't something any developer wants, so it makes sense that hardware compatibility would be tested extensively. Again, this isn't something SCS has officially confirmed. But looking at the equipment visible in the office, it certainly suggests that controller and wheel testing could be happening as part of the development process. And honestly, that's exactly what you'd expect before launching on an entirely new platform. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Over the last several major updates, we've seen enormous changes to the game's user interface. Menus have been redesigned. The road advisor has changed significantly. Widgets have been introduced, the quick info panel arrived, management screens have been reorganized, the new multifunction display was introduced. More information is now easier to access while driving. Navigation has become cleaner. Vehicle controls are much easier to find at first. Some PC players wondered why SCS was spending so much time redesigning menus that already worked. But when you think about consoles, everything starts making sense. A keyboard gives you dozens of keys, a controller doesn't. Every menu has to be easier to navigate. Every button has to make sense. Every screen has to be readable from a TV sitting several feet away. The interface has to be simple, responsive, and intuitive. That's why I believe many of these UI and UX improvements aren't just helping PC players. They're also laying the foundation for future console support. And there's something else worth mentioning. These interface improvements also fit perfectly with SCS's other ongoing projects. We've seen development on coaches. We've seen Road Trip being announced. Both of these projects introduce completely new ways of playing, new vehicles, new gameplay systems, different control layouts, different menus, different player expectations, so the interface needed to evolve anyway, instead of creating separate systems for every project. It makes much more sense for SCS to build one modern interface that works across everything. PC, coaches, road trip, and eventually consoles. Again, that's my interpretation based on everything we've seen. But the direction seems increasingly clear. Another thing people often ask is, Why is it taking so long? Honestly, I think the answer is quality. Bringing ETS2 and ATS to consoles isn't as simple as pressing an export button. These are massive simulation games. Thousands of kilometers of roads, hundreds of cities, complex AI traffic, physics, weather, lighting, audio, thousands of assets, dozens of DLCs, years and years of accumulated content. Everything has to work. Everything has to perform well. Everything has to meet the technical requirements of PlayStation and Xbox. Performance has to remain stable. Loading times need to be acceptable. Memory usage has to stay within console limits. Controllers need to feel responsive. Supported steering wheels need to function correctly. Save systems need to work. Achievements need to work. Online services need to work. Every single part has to be polished. That's a huge amount of testing, and from what we're seeing, testing appears to be happening extensively inside the company. Personally, I don't think the delay is because SCS doesn't want to release the games. I think they're making sure that when they finally do, players receive a finished product. Nobody wants a rushed release. Nobody wants constant crashes. Nobody wants broken steering wheel support. Nobody wants performance issues, especially for a game that people have been waiting years to play. If SCS only gets one first impression on consoles, it has to be a good one. And that's why I believe they're taking their time. Every update we've received recently seems to move another piece into place. Better interface, better user experience, improved controller navigation, modern menu systems, ongoing testing, hardware validation. Everything appears to be moving toward the same destination. Now, does this mean console release is just around the corner? We simply don't know. Only SCS Software knows their internal timeline. Until they officially announce something, we can only look at the clues they've shared and connect the dots. But compared to where we were a few years ago, it definitely feels like the project is much further along. And that's exciting because it means the dream of driving across Europe or America on PlayStation or Xbox feels more realistic than ever before. So what do you think? After looking at everything we've discussed today, do you think SCS is getting closer to releasing ETS2 and ATS on consoles? Or do you think there's still a long road ahead? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.